Welcome back to the Mentally Fit Athlete. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Von Stietz. My co host, Lydia Garcia, is not here today. As I said last time, we've had some trouble lining our schedules. So, one of the plans that we had is to answer questions separately that can be posted. So, today I'm going to start working my way through uh, questions from high school student athletes. I did that last time. I think it was helpful. I think it was good. Helps to keep me sharp. Hopefully, um, I can say something that's helpful to people who are tuning in. Um, and these are questions from high school athletes. Uh, and then I have answered them in the past when I met with them, and then I haven't really had a chance to look too closely again. So I'm just going to try to fire off some answers just like last time. And yeah, like I said, hopefully this is helpful to somebody. Okay. So, first question I'm going to go to: insomnia can seriously affect reaction time, focus, and emotional control. What strategies do you use to help athletes break the cycle of performance anxiety and poor sleep without relying on medication? All right, great question. Yeah, like this question is alluding to, athletes, they need their sleep. Lack of sleep can lead to poor reaction time, depression, low energy, all of that stuff. There's tons of reasons why athletes can have poor sleep. It might be that they have a game, sort of late at night, or it could be late at night, 9 p.m., who knows, could be very late, or they could have late practice or strength and conditioning late at night. And then uh, maybe they go out with friends after practice. Maybe they don't go straight home and go to sleep, or maybe they want to go home and go to sleep, but they have a high arousal level from working out, from doing what they had to do at practice or at the game. And then maybe they need to wake up early, either to travel for the next game or to take a class if they're a student athlete. So there could be all kinds of stuff going on. Um, if somebody has insomnia, so if that means that they have difficulty sleeping, difficulty initiating sleep, and difficulty maintaining sleep, and it happens, around three or more times a week, and they have anxiety about it, then that's called insomnia. So there's something called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBT-I, that is something that I do with athletes. And it's not just helpful for athletes, but helpful for performers of any kind, or also just general population. So that's a whole thing. I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm going to try to just give a quick answer. So, something that can be helpful for athletes to lower their arousal level and then help them to fall asleep and wake up when they need to the next morning is something called progressive muscle relaxation. So the idea is pretty simple. If you take a muscle and then squeeze, and then release, you end up being a lot more relaxed than you would be if you just try to relax. So progressive muscle relaxation is when you go through, each muscle squeezing and then releasing. And it could be a very quick thing that takes 3 minutes to just do big sections of your body, in a row, and then move on to the next section. Or it could be something that is very slow and takes 40 minutes to an hour, where you just go, little section by little section throughout your body, squeezing and then releasing, and that ends up being very relaxing and lowering your arousal level. I've seen studies, or I've seen one study that really stands out in my mind, where NHL players did progressive muscle relaxation after their night game, and then that greatly reduced their arousal level and greatly helped them or improve their sleep, so they could wake up and travel and do it all again the next day. So the short answer: progressive muscle relaxation. And then if you want a longer answer, CBT-I, but that's going to take a healthcare provider, a psychologist working with you to learn CBT-I, progressive muscle relaxation. That's something you can Google search, you can do a YouTube search, get a free YouTube video or a free sort of recording somewhere. The only issue would be if you're going along on YouTube, there could be an ad that happens in the middle and just kind of snaps you out of what's going on. But you do what you can. So there you go. We move on to the next question. Okay. When working with athletes who have OCD, how do you help them to tell the difference between helpful routines that support performance and compulsive behaviors that actually increase anxiety and hurt performance? Great question. So I do work with a lot of athletes with OCD. I would say that's probably my biggest specialty, working with athletes with OCD. So yeah, there's lots of context when it comes to athletes with OCD, but let me just give a quick answer. So a compulsion a compulsive ritual would be something that an athlete does that doesn't actually directly help their performance, but if they didn't do it, they would have obsessional doubts. They would have a lot of anxiety, and they would think that they need to do whatever that ritual is. And it could be different for everybody. OCD can look lots of different ways. It could just be something as simple as thinking something in their head, like "don't strike out," or it could be something like thinking a positive thought in their head that they feel like they have to think, or thinking that thought three times, or tapping something three times, or whatever it might be, or touching their fingertips in a specific order. And any of those rituals where you can clearly see that has no direct impact on your performance. And if you don't do it, you have intense anxiety. So that would be a compulsion. And then something like a good luck charm or part of their mental routine. Well, something like that, they're not going to feel distress if they don't do it, or they might just feel mild distress. But we want your mental routine to be additive. We wanted to give you benefits. So something like taking a slow, deep breath, that's going to lower your arousal level. That's going to help you to focus. It's going to help you to be in the present moment. Or if you look at a focal point, like maybe a light off in the distance, like a lamppost or something. Okay, maybe that just helps you to focus on one thing. It can be very grounding. And if you don't do it, well, you're not going to get the benefits, but you're not going to feel anxiety from the lack of doing it. So that would be the difference. If it's something compulsive, you're going to feel a lot of distress from not doing it. Whereas if it's part of your pregame routine, or sort of like in the moment mental routine that helps you, then that's additive. It helps you to perform better. And then there's a lot more to OCD and to working with athletes with OCD, but let's just leave it right there for now. Okay. Let's see. What's the next question? Do you think fame and high pressure correlates to higher stress in sports? Sure. Yeah, and I think it does for most people. Doesn't have to, but it does. I think it usually does. And then I'm just going to give a real quick, real simple answer. Fame and high reputation is something that's outside of your control. You can be an amazing athlete, and the fans, the public, the scouts, whoever, maybe they don't pay that much attention to you. So you're not really famous. You don't have this high reputation, or maybe you're just considered solid, you're considered, a reliable player, um, and you don't get a lot of press. Well, that is outside of your control. And if you are famous and you do have this reputation, yeah, that's out of your control. You can do things to try to give yourself that reputation, but like people know on social media, you can follow some social media plan. You can make posts that you think are, going to go viral, that are really catchy, and they can just fall flat. Nobody cares. Uh, so fame, reputation are completely out of your control for the most part. And if you're focused on fame, if you're focused on reputation, if you're focused on things that are outside of your control, you're probably going to feel anxious. You're just going to feel stressed. And the more that you can focus on things that are within your control, like your technique, your workout, your mental routine, your recovery process, then the more confident you're going to feel and the better you're going to perform. So, short answer, yeah. If you're focused, if you're distracted by your fame and your reputation, if you're concerned about it, then that can definitely lead to higher stress levels. So you really just want to focus on what you can control, you know, your workouts, your mental game, your recovery process, your family life, those things. You're going to feel a lot better if you do that. All right, let's go on to the next question. Let's see. When an athlete performs well in practice, but consistently underperforms in competition, how do you help them to retrain their mindset so pressure doesn't override their inherent skills? Yeah, very good question. So this happens all the time. Athletes can perform great in their workouts and their practice. And then when it comes to a competition, then they can underperform. So what's going on there? I mean, the vast majority of the time, it's probably going to be anxiety. There could be other things. Maybe they have transportation issues getting to their competitions that aren't, related to anxiety. Maybe they could, have nutrition issues. There could be other things, but it's most likely going to be anxiety. And either way, that's what I deal with. So that's what I'm going to talk about, anxiety. Uh, so it's probably that people are, yeah, that people have an underlying belief that they're going to fail, that they're not good enough, that they need to do something extra, something that they haven't practiced. They need to pull something out of their hat, something different that they don't do in practice now that it's competition time. They have some kind of belief that competition is different than practice. And, if we're going to be honest, competition is different than practice, but as an athlete, you need to approach competition as if it's pretty much the same thing, or you have your skills that you use in practice, and you need to use those same skills in competition. And it's going to be a little bit different, but you know that belief that competition is very different than practice is going to lead to a lot of anxiety. It's going to lead to focusing on the outcome and focusing on things that aren't in your control, and that's going to mess up your um, your performance. So, what can you do about it? Well, um, there's lots of things. Mindfulness meditation. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. Just working on challenging your negative beliefs and learning a new way to look at things. You're never lying to yourself. You're never thinking positively in a way that is untrue, but you're challenging your negative beliefs and learning to think in ways that are more helpful. And one way to do that is something called an imaginal exposure exercise. And then I don't want to get into it too much right now to really, make this an extra long video. But imaginal exposure exercise is when you're actually imagining the worst case scenario. So if you're a baseball player, you're imagining yourself striking out in an embarrassing way, in humiliating fashion, and you want to bring up all the uncomfortable feelings that go along with that. One of the things that I'll do with athletes is watch a blooper reel of baseball players doing things that making errors or failing in a way that the person I'm working with is afraid of happening, in their experience to themselves. And you just let yourself feel all that discomfort. And then over time, you get more and more comfortable with it. Because the thing is, you're not, um, you're not doing this planning to fail. You're doing this to expose yourself to the thoughts that you're already having. If you're having a lot of performance anxiety and consistently underperforming, you're already having thoughts of failure. You're already seeing yourself fail, and you're trying to block it out. You're trying to block out those thoughts because they're uncomfortable and you don't want those things to happen. And then when you do that, those thoughts just keep coming back and it's overwhelming and it makes you uncomfortable and then it leads to failure. So we're getting more comfortable with those thoughts and with those emotions. And then when you get more comfortable with it, can't hurt you anymore, can't affect you anymore. It's got no power over you. And then now you can step up to bat and you can maybe have some thoughts of failure, but it doesn't have the same power over you. And then you can focus on the task and do what you need to do. So that's called an imaginal exposure exercise. All right, next question. See, since you combine clinical psychology tools like CBT with performance methods and improv comedy, how do you decide which approach to use with an athlete who feels mentally blocked but isn't sure what the root cause is? All right, great question. So, like this question is pointing out, I do lots of different approaches: cognitive behavioral therapy, uh, more of the classic mental skills training from sports psychology, stuff that Ken Reviza taught athletes and stuff that Ken Reviza taught his students as a professor. And then I also do improv comedy where I teach athletes how to do improv, and that helps them to feel uncomfortable, deal with embarrassment, deal with being in the spotlight, and use their mental skills to perform under pressure and communicate and work together, with their scene partner. And then that helps them in practice and in games and in their regular life. So I do all those things. So how do I decide how to help an athlete? Well, it usually when an athlete's struggling with their mental game, it's it's usually coming down to some kind of emotional avoidance. There's something that they feel that makes them very uncomfortable uh, when they're performing. They get into these performance situations and then they have uncomfortable thoughts and uncomfortable emotions. And it's not necessarily the situation that they're avoiding, it's the feeling. So let's say a baseball player has performance anxiety when they're batting, uh, and then maybe they're trying to avoid batting. Well, it's not really the batting that they're trying to avoid. It's they're trying to avoid that feeling, and lots of people have had the experience where they think, oh, when I'm in this situation, when I'm at batting practice at the batting cages, I feel great, and then when I'm in a game I feel like a wreck. What's going on? How come and they think what I really need is I just need to not care. I just need to not feel that emotion and then I can do great. Well, sure, kind of. But what you need is to be able to tolerate that emotional discomfort and then you can get to the place where you don't care so much and you can perform. So when I'm working with an athlete, the way how I decide what approach I'm going to take is to really get to know the athlete, get to know what it is they're worried could happen, like what's their worst case scenario that haunts them, and what do they think? What are the things that they're doing that are avoidant? Like what are they avoiding in hopes of not feeling that discomfort? And then we work together uh, to face that discomfort, face those uncomfortable emotions. And then when they do that, they can perform better. So it just kind of comes down to their specific emotional avoidance and how can we get at that? How can we approach that instead of avoiding? All right, let's do one last question. Let's see. Have you ever worked with someone where improving enjoyment actually came before performance? And if so, how did you know when when enjoyment stopped being a feel-good goal and started becoming a competitive advantage? All right. Very good question. So, do I ever work with people so they can enjoy their sport more? And then, does that ever lead to a competitive advantage? Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so sports psychology is not just a means of improving performance, but it's also meant to help people to enjoy their sport more. And there's a good reason for that. When people are enjoying their sport more, they're usually working harder. They're usually just really engaged with what they're doing. They're not thinking about outcomes. They're not thinking about playing time or who's getting credit, who's getting the press, who's getting all that stuff. They're enjoying what they're doing. And where they're doing those things, they perform better. So absolutely. And then, when does it kind of transition from just feel good a feel good thing to actually a competitive advantage? I mean, that's hard to say. I would say if you're enjoying what you're doing and you're focused on the task and you're in the present moment, then that is a competitive advantage. And if you're feeling good, but then you're not doing those things, if you're feeling good and you're kind of like one of those little 5-year-olds at soccer practice where they're just running around, they're not paying attention to what they're doing, and they're talking to their friends. And that's great for a 5-year-old, but that's not going to help you competitively. So I guess the short answer is it becomes a competitive advantage when it helps the athlete, when enjoyment helps the athlete to focus on their task and to just kind of be in the present moment, engage with what they're doing, focus on the task, basically. If you enjoy the sport in a way that it leads to you focusing on the task, that's an advantage. If you're enjoying the sport, but you're not focused on the task, I would argue that you're not actually enjoying the sport. You're enjoying kind of being outside with friends, I guess, which is fine. That's great if that's what you want. But if you're a competitive athlete, you want to focus on the task. All right. Like I said, I wanted this to just be a quick question and answer session. Hopefully that was helpful. I'll try to get this posted again soon. Yeah, if you like this, follow us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and we're posting these on YouTube. So uh, yeah, subscribe and like this stuff. Hit like on YouTube, and yeah, you can find me at drjasonvonsteets.com. And hope you like this. I'll see if I can keep doing this. All right, see you soon.